I'm allergic to money. The minute it's in my pocket, somehow it flies out of my pocket. And I think it's because of the way I was brought up with my father, because my father attempted many times to be successful at business. So my father came to the UK and he was homeless for around 9 months. And what's very interesting about my father's life is that my father had many opportunities to make it big the easy way. And he refused. I remember he was so hungry. He was telling me he was so hungry on the streets of London. And he had the opportunity to have some food, but he had to do some, what we would consider haram or something that's not ethical. My dad's not Muslim, by the way, but he's a very ethical human being. Because he was so cold and wanted food, his only option was, at that time, prison or a cell. So what he did, he pretended to steal something. And then the police caught him and they found out he didn't do anything, but they put him to the cell anyway. My father spent a few days, probably had some food, and went back onto the streets. So this was a journey of 9 months for my father in the UK. And what my father then decided to do was basically get involved into the factory business. What I mean by factory is the clothing industry. So from that perspective, my dad was doing relatively well in the 1980s. We weren't rich, we were still living in, for example, on an estate. It was called the Downs Estate, so it was built in a ditch, Amos Road in Hackney. It's not a very nice area. And my father got bankrupt. And the reason he basically had to give up his business is because my dad was one of the most kind of ethical persons you could ever meet in business. And generally speaking, there's a Greek saying, I believe, in order to be successful in business, you have to be unethical, right? Which is not true. We don't believe that in Islam, obviously. But from my dad's context, it was like a big test for him because he had two choices. Do I give money to pay for my people, the people underneath him? They had families and children. Do I give them money, their wage, because it was around Christmas period, so their children could eat, they could have a nice festive time? Or do I not give them the money so I could save my business and save my family? My dad, being my dad, he basically gave them the money, and he basically borrowed more money so he could feed his people. And that was the time when we were basically eating potatoes for 2 weeks. My mom's very creative. You could do so many things with potatoes, man. So after that, my dad was unemployed for, I think, a few years. Then he tried to open another business. And that failed. Then he tried to open another business, which was another factory business. And this time he took a lot of risks. So he had a partner, and he didn't insure any of his machines. So after a few months, what happened? Someone stole all his machines. He walks into the factory, and it's like empty space. It was like, this kind of economic vacuum all of a sudden, right? There's nothing here anymore. And his partner stole all the machines, sold them off. His partner went AWOL to Cyprus or someplace. And the police came and they thought it was like a fraud insurance scam. He said, no, I'm not even insured. So my dad has had those experiences, right? And that has affected me in a very profound way. The reason I'm mentioning this is because my dad is the richest man in the world. My dad is a multi-millionaire, but he has zero in his bank. Do you know why? Because he's happy and he's content and he's not enslaved to what we'll call in the Islamic tradition, the dunya, coming from the word adna, which means low and lowly. I'm saying this to give you a perspective, because money is never an end. It's always a means. Because sometimes people say, I just want to be rich, and they don't know why they want to be rich. I want to have money, I want to feel comfortable. But these are very kind of ambiguous, open-ended statements. We need to be specific about our goals. Like, I have friends who are relatively wealthy, and they complain more than anybody because they don't have the right spiritual mindset. They don't have the right attitude. And you can see that the way they spend their money is just basically a derivative of their own psychological state, that they're not at peace. Let's remember the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ when he said that true richness is not having wealth, it's actually the richness of the soul. And this is what you guys need to achieve, that richness of the soul. And make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes you rich in order for you to basically help others, in order for you to invest in your akhirah, so you can therefore have a rich soul.